Welcoming onto our coverage this morning, Anand Ranganathan, commentator, best-selling author as well. Good morning, Anand. A very happy Independence Day to you as well. A 90-minute speech by the Prime Minister. So much happening in the world. A lot of turbulence. Everyone had guesses correctly this time, as it turned out, about what the Prime Minister's speech was really going to be about. Lots of stuff about reform, lots of stuff about Atmanirbhar Bharat, and a real sort of thrust about India having to do it by itself. What was your big takeaway, Anand?
No, indeed, and thank you so much, Shiv, and everyone for having me here. Happy Independence Day to everyone. It was, I would say, comparisons are, always a bit tricky, but possibly his best speech in the 11 speeches that he's given. All said and done, in totality, I'm saying I was rousing in parts. He said all the right things, ticked all the boxes. And of course, when he talked about Operation Sindoor and our armed forces and Atmanirbharta, we have the good hero here, from the military as an example, and he would, elaborate more on that. And then he talked about, the health concerns, the obesity. We have a specimen here. He will talk about. No, sorry about that. I was just pointing at Abhijit out here. Yes. No, but yes.
That was a BrahMos.
But I think, if at all, I'm not nitpicking out here.
Yeah.
I think the speech was rousing and important in the external factors that he talked about, that India needs to, rise up. I would have preferred, again, I'm not nitpicking, but, these problems are there. He's focusing on them, but I think I would have liked had he focused a little bit more on internal factors. I'm not talking of the Ghusbatia thing, which is important, demography, and I'm very happy that he mentioned that. It's very rare for somebody to mention it. People, I think that's probably going to be the talking point, politically incorrect or whatever, but it's absolutely essential. But, when he talked about Mere Desh Ki Dharti, Mere Kisan, well, he would have been remembered as the Prime Minister who brought in the greatest reforms in independent India. I'm talking about the 3 farm laws,
Yeah.
And, there are reforms that affect 5 million, 10 million people. Here were 3 that affected 300 million people directly, and so many indirectly. And then, he took them back. Of course, he was forced to, or whatever you may say, the opposition that had promised those very reforms took a U-turn. Those are the internal things that I wish, would come back to the table, because let's face it, that is one of the biggest challenges that this country faces, agricultural reforms, and something we cannot be a developed nation. The problems are so daunting there, Shiv. I can basically rant out the things that need to be done. He talked about Indus Water Treaty, which I believe, putting it in abeyance, is his greatest achievement.
True, I agree completely.
But when he talks about Indus Water Treaty and the farmers being denied water, let's also remember that 3,200 billion cubic feet of Godavari water during the monsoon goes into the ocean every year. And the water requirement for the entire state of Tamil Nadu is 1,800 billion cubic feet. 30 years, past Supreme Court, 5 governments have mandated we must link 30 rivers, river linking. And it was only 2 months ago that the Prime Minister himself inaugurated the first link. So there are problems that we need to focus internally that possibly lacked a bit more, I would say, emphasis in this speech. But otherwise, yeah.
The other takeaway that I was talking about is also this Sudarshan mission.
Yes.
It looks a little far-fetched now, but he says that there's going to be a lot of planning that will be put into this, and every institution that's critical for public infrastructure is going to be part of this national security shield. What did you think of that?
That was brilliant. As I said, some of the things that he talked about, combating the external factors, Atmanirbharta, it's very good, it's laudable, and of course, Abhijit will talk about where we are in terms of defense and Atmanirbharta. He's already tweeted a little bit about it. The fact remains that, there are Atmanirbharta can only go so far. For example, there are things that, yes, we should be Atmanirbhar on, but there are things, especially in defense, that especially now, today in an uncertain world, we cannot be Atmanirbhar. We simply don't have that technology. We are building it. He talked about semiconductor chips and all those things that we missed the bus. We missed the bus in a lot of things. And as I said, Abhijit is going to talk about the jet engine especially. He's already been sarcastically tweeting about it. The fact remains, there are things where you can be Atmanirbhar. You can have Haldiram chips instead of Pringles. And as Abhijit Putno, you can have Shilajit instead of Viagra. But there are things where, you need technology that you cannot ignore. And there, I think to talk about especially Atmanirbharta in today's world is, I would say, a little bit hypocritical. I mean, you look at, for example, China and our trade imbalance with it. It's the highest ever. I mean, we have a trade of $125 billion with China. $110 billion is our deficit there. So we should not belong, be in that club where we always thinking internally. And India doesn't. India is a very flexible, very open, trade partner. We trade with 190 odd countries. We are not inward looking in there. So let's not focus entirely on Atmanirbharta when we've not Atmanirbhar in a majority of. I mean, let's take the biggest example of COVID. 90% of the vaccines were actually Covishield that was developed outside. Unfortunately, as it happened, the better vaccine, the Covaxin one was internal, but we could not, only 10% were vaccinated. So in medicine, in therapies, there are things that we cannot be Atmanirbhar right now.
Maybe it's a message to the US, because he also said that economic vested interests are looming, over the world, and this is the time to stand our ground. So possibly it's a message to the United States.
It is, and I mean, nothing exposes the hypocrisy of the West than the statements coming from Trump. I think even yesterday he said, Putin got scared because I put tariffs on India. But notwithstanding that, you look at the Russian energy and Russian oil that Europe and America continues to import, and they have the gall to put tariffs on us on that count. People have confused, and I had a wonderful discussion with Shiv on this about tariffs, and I'm, basically on the first part where tariffs are concerned, I have a different view to what many Indians have. I think we must also open up. We must recognize that our tariffs were high, and tariffs are wrong in terms of, because all they promote is protectionism and license Raj, whatever. But, these tariffs that have been imposed on us unilaterally because of buying energy from Russia is just so hypocritical. So, I think Prime Minister is right there.
One ironic aspect of this entire conversation is that while there is this big trade and tariff stalemate with the United States, with Trump, there are many experts who believe that the way through it is actually through amping up the defense trade between India and the United States. There are some people who think that, not everyone, there are people who disagree as well. But it's interesting how, like Anand said, there was a great emphasis on Atmanirbhar Bharat, on defense especially, which has been something that has been a recurring theme since Operation Sindoor. What is your view on that, Abhijit? And then I'll come to Marshal Kapoor as well. On the defense aspect, it's important right now, not just because of the Trump aspect, but also because of Operation Sindoor.
Right. So I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. See, Trump...
You don't think that the defense trade should be increased?
No, I absolutely do not think it should be increased, because the basis of that defense trade was continuing political support and third countries, our relationship with third countries not getting in the way. We don't accuse America of cozying up to Pakistan, and they don't accuse us of cozying up to Russia. The basis of that trade has been broken, number one. Number two, Trump hasn't done this for the reasons, he threatened tariffs on us in Trump 1, for example. That was done purely for trade reasons. This one has been done partially out of a mix of personal pique and partly to, grandstand to his domestic audience. Now, when somebody is bullying you like that out of personal pique and a domestic audience, you never throw that dog a bone. That is the last thing you do. One of the best ways of understanding human psychology is training a dog. Your dog runs away from the leash and it comes back. And I've seen so many people slap their dog after he comes back, after he's done what you told him to do. You don't do that. Now, this guy is off the leash. He's not coming back to you. He's going further away. You then throw a bone. You're incentivizing bad behavior, right? So that would be the worst possible thing to do right now. We can't go down this path, and we don't have billions to waste like Qatar and Saudi Arabia that every time he gets upset, you buy 50 F-15s or F-35s and you buy your way out of it.
Marshal Kapoor, what did you think of the Atmanirbhar push as far as defense is concerned? It's become much more complicated and maybe a little bit more urgent right now in the face of what we're looking at from the outside. And I think what Anand said is very important, because I completely agree that we need to focus much more on what's happening on the inside, but we also have to acknowledge that the urgency of focusing on the inside is now, perhaps unprecedentedly being influenced by what's happening from the outside, especially Trump.
Yes, the bone analogy which he gave just now is absolutely correct, because when Prime Minister visited America early this year, the Americans had offered F-35s.
Yeah.
And if you see, F-35s have already had 13 crashes since its induction. It's very, very expensive to operate and maintain. And I was reading yesterday, one F-35 has again diverted in Japan and is
It's just spent its 4th day on the ground, by the way.
Yes.
Maybe trying to beat the Kerala record.
They have spent billions and billions, Lockheed plus the US government, in manufacturing F-35s. But if the commensurate output doesn't come. The best thing I liked in today's speech was that the Prime Minister from the ramparts have mentioned about jet engine. Now, why is the importance of jet engine? I feel
we're buying all our jet engines for the Tejas from the United States.
No. The issue is jet engine is like nuclear technology. Nobody wants to share it with you. Only 4 to 5 countries globally can manufacture a fighter jet engine. They do not wish to part with this technology. Now, India did begin its process for LCA by manufacturing the Kaveri engine. The GTRE did begin. But it, after many, many years, could only give about 55 kilonewtons of thrust, whereas the requirement
underpowered.
Underpowered.
Yeah, couldn't
so
be
that
used.
could be used now for Ghataks or UAVs.
No, it's very interesting that the Prime Minister actually said jet engines.
So now coming to what is the problem with us? We need, I just jotted down a few points, high-tech materials. We need precision manufacturing. We need aerodynamic design expertise. We need advanced testing, that is the test beds and other things we will need. We need control systems, that FedEx and other things, that is with secure coding and redundancy. Also, the challenges which we have to negotiate now to reach at this place includes the tech denial, which I just mentioned. The countries are not willing to part with this. The metallurgy gap. We do not have the metals which are required, and there are large thousands of moving parts in a jet engine. The nozzles move with everything. This precision of nanotech and the cutting edge machines which are needed. And then India is a typical country where we have to operate the same engine at minus 45, 50 degrees in Siachen.
No
has to be in deserts, has to be in a coastal region where the humidity and corrosion aspects are there. So all these aspects will have to be taken care. These engines have long developmental cycles, typically 15 to 20 years. So having set up at a national mission mode to manufacture jet engine, and here I suggest, and I throw you to the people who are watching, that we should have whole of a nation approach in this.
No, the whole of a nation approach will have to be, the Prime Minister saying something this specific, this, not something that everybody would appreciate instantly, is a very big deal in my opinion. The Prime Minister saying that we need our own jet engine is a huge deal. Please, Anand.
No, I mean, he absolutely, I agree with you. But, let me give you 2 instances. First, the good news. I think we owe a lot, of course, to Dr. Kalam, the late Dr. Kalam, but it was he who in 1993, if you remember, he came up with this Kalam ratio. He said, right now we are spending 70% of the defense budget on buying equipment from outside. I want in 30 years to for it to be flipped, so that we'll be spending 70% of our budget on something that we manufacture internally, and that is exactly what has happened.
Yeah, it has happened.
So it's taken 30 years. That's the good news. The bad news, in fact, is not given by me, but given by the air chief, current air chief, when he talked about the induction of Tejas. Tejas itself is now, the project is more than 30 years old. 40, Abhijit corrects me by saying it's 40. So you cannot afford, especially in defense area, to wait interminably for something that you need almost immediately. And we saw S-400s. I mean, Akash was brilliant, but the air chief also talked about the success of S-400. So this is one sector where you cannot afford. I mean, again, I go back to COVID vaccine. You cannot afford to wait for years to develop something that may or may not happen after 20, 30 years. You need it immediately.
Yeah, Abhijit. And I also want to ask you, Abhijit, you can add what you want about the jet engine part of it. Sanjay Jha is also joining our coverage. Tehseen, I'm coming to you in just a moment. On the Sudarshan, protection system, people are interpreting it as, has Prime Minister Modi announced an Iron Dome type project for Indian cities? That's the only thing that came to my mind when he said Sudarshan Chakra, right? He said every installation, every city, every vital establishment will have the protection of something called the Sudarshan Chakra.
But he Indianized it with Mahabharata and Krishna.
Yeah. Right. Just the way Trump took Iron Dome and made it the Golden Dome.
Right? The Golden Dome,
See, I think given what's been happening in the Russia-Ukraine war and the Iran-Israel war, you have these drones that are traveling thousands of kilometers. We saw Ukraine, well, it turned out it wasn't 4,000 kilometers, it was actually just 5-6 kilometers because it was a truck-based attack. But in other attacks, you're seeing these drones which are so cheap to produce, about $30,000, going, hitting critical infrastructure thousands of miles away. And that is something you now have to take very seriously. The old paradigms of, air defense, where you would have air defense artillery and only some pockets of air protection, that is no longer applicable. Everything now has become a target. You need a very comprehensive system. And one thing that came out in Operation Sindoor is we achieved a much higher intercept, much better intercept ratio than Israel operating with French, British, Saudi, Jordanian and Iraqi aircraft at maybe 100th, if not 1,000th of the price, if you look at the actual input costs out there. That is the kind of frugal innovation we need, and I think our local companies will rise up to the challenge. But, and this is where the jet engine comes in, all the testing for our jet engine had to be done in Russia because you don't even have a local testing facility. The Kalyani and the Tata howitzers, which are basically local redevelopments of the FH-77 Bofors barrel, they weren't even allowed to test at local ranges because DRDO treats it like my bap. They had to go all the way to Australia to test that gun and bring it back. Are you going to take action against the DRDO for doing things like that? See, quality is a function of labor. Have you, what are the labor laws you have brought in? Where is the accountability for, HAL or DRDO claiming they can do projects, not delivering, keeping the private sector out of it? Where is the motivation for labor to deliver on that quality? So if you go to the Gripen factory, for example, in Sweden, one of the ways in which they reduced costs by 15%, labor costs by 15%, is the guy next in the production chain, he checks the work of the previous guy. So it is managerial supervision ability given to an individual on the factory floor, right? The most important thing out here is, you can't just start producing military engines. Those military engines have to be produced by a private player who also produces competitive civil engines. Even if you have, say, 600-700 of one type of aircraft, single engine aircraft, you're only buying 600 engines. The civil market is so much bigger. It is what essentially subsidizes your military market. They don't seem to get that there has to be that civil military crossover because the civil market is so much bigger. Until you do that, you cannot get a private sector to seriously play. They will cut costs. They will do this buy Chinese and put made in India sticker on it and things like that. Not that Chinese engines are very good. Next is what the Air Marshal said. Today materials, China and Russia are not producing very good crystals for their engines. The difference being metals expand, there is metal fatigue and things like that. Crystals do not expand. They are completely stable. That is a science that the West will not give you unless there is greater political alignment. I do know for a fact that Rolls-Royce had in fact come and said, we'll do it for you, but you have to give us your naval market, which is the MT-30 engine. They're asking for a short-term monopoly, a 10-15 year monopoly. Are you willing to make those tough decisions? I doubt that very much. Sorry, just one more point. We have seen that some defense programs, especially the nuclear related programs and ISRO, because ISRO is the civil military conjoining. What DRDO does for nuclear missiles, ISRO uses the same tech for civil. They are highly successful, A, because they are conjoined as civil military, and B, because they come directly under the PMO. Now, how much is going to get centralized into the PMO? PM kya karenge?
This in fact sounded like the jet engine project is going to be under the PMO.
Going to be under the PMO.
That's what this sounded like to me.
It seems, then what are all the other mantris and...
Tehseen is smiling. Tehseen has been down this road before, it looks like. Yes, Tehseen.
Yeah, so first of all, Operation Sindoor, before I come to the jet engines, because that is something that I completely agree with Abhijit with. DRDO sort of operates in my city, and we know how they function. But look, let me begin with the jet engines. I think fantastic Operation Sindoor, in my opinion, was something that the world has stood and watched in awe. In modern Air Force battles, we haven't seen warfare of this sort, and the kind of dominance India achieved over the neighboring country and the kind of defense we had, indigenous technology, I think it's hats off to everything. So I think Operation Sindoor should rightly be celebrated. But then that leads to the second issue. If you want to develop indigenous technology, if you want to have people to come in and develop, for example, jet engines, you know, Ashif, and I'm saying this very seriously, jet engines are more complex than a nuclear or a rocket engine. They are much, much more complex. So like Abhijit rightly said, your Kaveri was tested in Russia. You don't have the high altitude testing facilities in India. So where is your specialized engineering courses that will allow people to come in and work out here? You'll have to get in foreigners who will come in, who will teach this to your people. You'll have to have some sort of a partnership with say a Rolls-Royce or somebody who then teaches your population, your engineers. You'll have to have those specialized courses coming in to make those kind of adjustments, and that requires political will. That can't be done from the PMO, and PMO can't be running it. It has to be de-bureaucratification. The bureaucrats need to get out of the way. And look, ultimately, as an entrepreneur, I need to make money. If I have to get engineers from abroad, it's very simple economics, who come, I have to set up units in India. That costs money. I can't only be supplying to the Indian military. It must be a civilian military partnership. Right. Those reforms, when they come and makes it commercially viable for somebody like me to put in money and take those risks. And one last thing in the reforms. When somebody takes risks, entrepreneurs, please don't go after them as if they're criminals. Let's stop calling entrepreneurs criminals. The bureaucracy in this country will go after entrepreneurs criminally. That is so bad. If you really want independence, honestly, if you're celebrating our 79th independence, let's seriously have a conversation how we can cut down our IS by 50%. The minute we do this, this country's GDP will go up by 2%. That is the first independence that we need, because for every solution, the IS will give you a problem.
Okay, thank you, Tehseen. Sanjay Jha, the PM announced a lot of missions today, demographic mission, there's something on Sudarshan Chakra, national security, there's also on Rozgar and unemployment, and for farmers as well. I do think that the government is trying out a lot of new things. We did see a similar livelihood mission getting announced in the budget. There was something for farmers as well, like Anand Ranganathan pointed out. How effective do you think those programs have been, and what do you think have been the biggest takeaways? Do you think that effective policy making is going to be important, because these schemes have just been announced, but there's no framework as such?
Hi, good morning to you and to the fellow panelists. Now, I've been hearing your program for the last 12 minutes, and let me be candid. If you have invited me to be part of a cheerleader tribe, you have called the wrong guy, in which case I can happily drop out of the program, because the impression I get, impression I get is that
Sanjay, you're on the wrong channel if you think we've called you as a cheerleader.
As if the only problem that the country has is defense expenditure and modernization. I think you're missing the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that first, any country, especially one that calls itself the mother of democracy, needs to get its institutions in place. Yes, there will always be external threats, but I think the bigger problem, and I need to tell that to you and your panel with whatever limited time I have on your show, is the fact that the problems that you have within is what the government needs to treat as a priority. And I worry because to me, India's biggest challenge and the elephant in the room is not the tinkering of one policy vis-a-vis the other. We have seen over 11 years a lot of these speeches from the Red Fort, they have literally gone nowhere at all. So I wouldn't like to waste my time and breath on commenting on Mr. Modi's speech, to be very honest with you. The issue here is the health of India's democratic and constitutional institutions and the polarization and divisiveness that has been spread over the last 11 years that has really weakened our country considerably. Let me give you two examples. Why is the Supreme Court having to use language such as, and this is telling the ED, right? The ED, which is the Rottweiler, which is sent against the opposition to which I belong, calling it a crook. Stop behaving like a crook. That's the Supreme Court calling the ED. Can anybody deny that? It's telling the ED, stop becoming a front for a political battle. And this is an institution that is terrifying the business world and the political fraternity. This is the health of India's institution. Yesterday, the Supreme Court had to come and say and literally order the election commission to put up the 65 lakh deleted voters in Bihar. And if the Supreme Court doesn't intervene, the election commission, which is supposed to be the body to hold transparent and fair elections, which is the foundation of a democracy, will not act. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're all eminent people. I think everybody here on the panel brings their own baggage of experience. That if we are going to live in a fool's paradise, we are doing so at our own peril. And one last point, because I'm also a student of economics, let's talk about defense and manufacturing, right? Defense is not a stock market trading instrument. It has to be manufactured on the ground. You need infrastructure, you need facilities, you need modernization. Look at the one data point on Made in India. You remember Mr. Modi became prime minister, there were these huge CII and FICCI and all these symposiums talking about India becoming the big hub, Atmanirbhar. The contribution of manufacturing in India's GDP is now at its lowest. It's gone to 12.5%. And I'm sorry, but this has to be a political conversation. I don't get carried away by hype and the moment and blah, blah, blah.
But
the truth is we are seeing
Sanjay, you're sounding unnecessarily sanctimonious today. We're all talking about the nitty-gritties here. Nobody here is a cheerleader, okay? I think all of us have actually criticized and questioned some of those things. So please put the sanctimony aside. This is Independence Day. We are dissecting on facts what the Prime Minister has said. Both Anand and Abhijit actually hauled some of those defense announcements over the coals. But Anand, do you want to say anything to Sanjay on the points he's raised? All valid points, by the way, Sanjay. I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just saying, we are all, nobody here is cheerleading the speech. We're talking about the points that have been raised there. Anand.
No, I mean, the first thing I would say, of course, to my good friend Sanjay is wishing him a very happy Independence Day. It's what Sanjay said seemed like any debate on any night. But the fact of the matter is that I'm sorry, it's far removed from the reality, because if you're talking of compromised institutions, the institutions that are compromised have always remained compromised. I'm not talking of those. The hallmark of compromising India's democracy is through two main forks, you can say. One is you compromise the sanctity and independence of the Supreme Court, and the other is of the Election Commission. Now, is there verifiable proof that any of these two institutions have been compromised? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, they are functioning better than what they were under the Congress. And I'm talking about facts. Has Narendra Modi, for example, ever unilaterally overturned a Supreme Court decision in the last 11 years? No, he hasn't. The only time he's overturned a Supreme Court decision is when the opposition agreed with him on the SC/ST Act amendments. That's the only instance. In fact, if he wanted, he could have done the Congress. Like Congress overturned Shah Bano judgment, he could have overturned the Sabrimala judgment to appease the Hindus. He didn't. So let's get the facts out here. Who was the one that which institution said anonymous electoral funding is wrong, should be? It was Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court was compromised, it would have gone with the government. Let's talk about the Election Commission now. Yes, you can say it remains as compromised in the last 11 years as it was ever been before. But even that is not proven by facts, because when you say, look, the Chief Justice of India should have been one of the parties to choose the Chief Election Commissioner or the body. The fact is, before the BJP, even that wasn't there. It was just the Prime Minister who chose the CEC and recommended it to the President, who said, yes, that person is. So let's not talk about, and when you talk about jobs, okay, well, it's your prerogative to not believe in any of the reports that have happened. But just the fact of yesterday, when the leader of opposition says India is a dead economy, and yesterday you have, I think it's Standard & Poor or the other S&P, upgrading India after 18 years. Do people do that for dead economies? So facts do not corroborate what Sanjay said. But I mean, it's a free country.
Also, just to add, manufacturing has gone up.
It's
it has just come down as a percentage of your GDP.
The PMI manufacturing is the highest ever, 59.
And this is why Disraeli used to say those famous words, right? There's lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon has also joined. I just noticed him there. General Dhillon, welcome. You've come right into a political part of the conversation here, where Anand and Sanjay just exchanged some comments on the more political aspects of it. But let's get you in on the conversation in general. General Dhillon, good to have you. Happy Independence Day. And as always, thank you for your service. A big day for India, 12th speech by the Prime Minister. What were your big takeaways, sir?
Thank you, Shiv, and wish you a very happy Independence Day. Happy Independence Day to the panelists and your viewers. And at the outset only, your condolences also for the Kishtwar cloudburst casualties, and praying for the safety of the people who are missing or injured. Having said that, I must compliment you for getting such a divergently cohesive panel. So,
well said, well said.
And I would like to say here, with the, taking the discussion back a little, India is a nation which has got two nuclear neighbors, the only country in the world, and both the neighbors are not friendly. We need to build our national capabilities as well as our defense capabilities. And talking about the defense capabilities, intentions can change overnight. Capabilities take decades to build. And everyone on the panel has given the views which are very much towards the same aim of making India stronger against two nuclear neighbors, as also a power to reckon with in the world, being the fourth largest economy, the biggest democracy, 1/6 of the world, and a military might. So I think everyone has spoken very well, and the Prime Minister's points which came up from the Red Fort are all in the same direction. I think we are all looking and thinking in the direction which is upwards. Only thing is the views may be divergent, opinions may be divergent, but that's the beauty of the democracy.
Right.
And I think everyone thinks properly,
sir, can you also tell us,
and in the right direction.
Right. Can you also tell us a little bit about how different was the Prime Minister's comment on Operation Sindoor today, especially when he spoke about the Indus Water Treaty, saying that it was completely one-sided and there's no scope for future negotiations. That's probably what he was inferring to.
See, Prime Minister's comments on Operation Sindoor were a natural comments, because Operation Sindoor had just got started about 100 days ago, and it is still in progress. And as regards Indus Water Treaty, yes, it is a one-sided treaty. It is affecting our farming community and otherwise the population along our northwestern and all along, going right up to Gujarat. I think we can benefit more from Indus Water if it is a fair treaty. And if we cut off the Indus Water or held in abeyance to make it a little more stringent, I can assure you, knowing the Pakistani layout of the grain of the country in this part of the world, the grain of the country is from northeast to southwest. The natural flow of the water is from northeast to southwest, and so is the alignment of Pakistan. If you see it along the northeast to southwest axis, from Siachen going right up to Arabian Sea. And moment we have our rivers water not going into Pakistan, lower half of Pakistan, Punjab, will dry out in 2 decades. it will become an extension of the desert. So that is how it impacts Pakistan, and we must hit where it hurts. And when the patient is recovering, we must increase the dose, or we must at least repeat the dose. And I am very much in line with it. We have to tell Pakistan to behave, or otherwise we have the tap, literally the tap of water in our hands. I totally agree with the Prime Minister and the views there.
Dr. Ranganathan, there was another thing that the Prime Minister talked about, and that was social justice. And that is very important given that politics today is centered around social justice. And he did make a mention of Jyotiba Phule, Birsa Munda. These are two important names when it comes to social justice. And he said that the only hallmark of social justice is saturation of welfare schemes. What did you think of this message? And was he also trying to take on the opposition, which has been relying on the PDA aspect and also increasing reservations?
Yeah, so two aspects to social justice. I think one is through welfareism, and I am all for India being a welfare state. It's just that I believe, and of course the Prime Minister didn't focus on that India needs to be a capitalist state in order for it to be a welfare state, because you need to generate the money in order then for you to distribute it, and we're just not. We're taking pride in being a socialist country. And that's another aspect in which the Prime Minister is blessed, because the opposition wants him to be a socialist country. The opposition wants public sector units to be there, and even if they are non-functional, but that's another matter. As far as the social welfare aspect is concerned, I think what has been achieved in the last 11 years, I'm talking with facts, has not been achieved in the last 60, 70 years. I'm talking of just the schemes. Because what people tend to do is they just look at the numbers, and bureaucrats also, they look at the numbers and they file them in a report and they're spoken in the parliament. Look at the next layer. Trust me, 110 million toilets have been made, but that's just a number. Every new toilet made has saved that household 50,000 rupees in health costs. Nobody's talking about that. 110 million tap water connections have been made. That's a number. But they have slashed the under 5 diarrheal deaths by half. No one's talking about that. 380 million Ayushman health cards have been distributed. That's a number. No one's saying that out of pocket expenses, that is the fastest way of driving Indians into poverty, has been slashed by 27%. At Ujjwala, just to give you the last example, 100 million gas connections. That's a number. And even the government just tom-toms that as a number. No one talks about that every year 150,000 lives are being directly saved. Because believe it or not, even I didn't know this, the largest mortality factor for infants in India is actually household pollution, is not any disease. Wo phuk ke chula jo banate hain, that's the thing. So social welfare, and as Modi said, nobody needs to tell me what poverty is because I've felt it. He's right there. Very quickly about the other reforms that need to be made, I'm sorry, no political party has the guts to implement what Dr. Ambedkar wanted, to have targeted reservations and for a limited time. It's just going in the other direction. And I don't think this government or any other government has the guts to say, let's follow Dr. Ambedkar, let's not worship him.
Yeah.
I will just add to what Abhijit said. The private sector, especially in US, 3 companies bid for 6th generation fighters.
Oh, you've jumped back to the jet engines.
Jet engine.
Okay.
So,
just so our viewers are not jarred by the sudden jumps between topics, I'll just get Abhijit in. I think he wanted to respond to Anand. Then I'll come to you, sir.
Yeah. I wanted to add to what Anand said. That was one aspect of the speech I found very disappointing. Social justice has to be measured in achievement, not by process. You can't just keep throwing money at a problem, and when you see it isn't achieving results. Most of our social welfare schemes work at cross purposes. So very simple. You look at the quality of doctors. Today, the supply of medical education in this country is controlled by a cabal and a mafia. There is a reason every member of parliament and politician owns a school of some kind, which is why the quality of your education is so pathetic. For a country where every mother wants such good education for her child, we have the most third-rate education to give to our kids. Why? Because it is an artificially controlled and manipulated market, just like the building and construction market is, right? So you don't want to sort that out. There is huge money being made out there which cannot be accessed because it is black. and then on the other hand, you're increasing the taxes and things to pay for these social schemes on the most productive part of your population, who you're taxing the living daylights out of. So, you know, he spoke about 12 lakh, the income, the IT cutoff thing. You earn 12 lakh and 1 rupee. Your entire salary then goes to the next level. How does this work? And you know, Vasudha, Shiv, you know this very well. Study after study after study across every single country shows you that the lower the taxes, the higher the collection and the greater the collection. People are much more willing to pay, tax avoidance is less. Here you're literally stripping profits before it can be plowed back in. The tariffs, you know, I'm glad in a sense Trump has imposed tariffs on us. Why? Because all those tariffs, the Indian consumer is paying more for third-rate products to keep useless capitalists who do not deliver on their promises in business. Why are we doing that? I would suggest almost 50% of our budget is cross-cycle wastage. It is money that is going nowhere, just like our defense budget. Why is it that Sweden, a tiny country, is able to produce so much more? They produce their own ships, they produce their own aircraft, they produce their own AVACs, they produce everything themselves. They don't produce a tank, but they produce an infantry combat vehicle. They have a budget of something like had a budget of $8 to $9 billion compared to $70 to $80 billion. So, you know, there is something very, very wrong systemically, and I don't think those things are being looked at. I think this is just old wine in a new bottle. I'm sorry.
I hope not. I hope.
Just ask Sanjay whether he still believes we are cheerleaders.
Sanjay, very quickly, a response from you.
Yeah, I think the first thing is this whole right-wing ecosystems obsession. We're talking about a capitalist system. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you should know your economics to know that even America, probably the best manifestation of a free market fundamentalist culture, has a big issue in terms of inequality. And you are talking, Shiv, about a country which has got 1% of the people holding anywhere between 40% to 60% of India's wealth. Choose whichever report you want to really give credibility to. And a country which is actually an underperforming economy because of one reason being crony capitalism. I mean, these are things that cannot be wished away simply because we choose to be in a collective bunch where everyone is going to smile at the others rather mendacious.
There is literally nobody smiling here. But okay.
I was going to say,
No,
Abhijit
can
is
I
actually
finish without the
cheerleader for
gentleman
Rahul
interrupting me
Gandhi.
every 5 seconds? Can we have a fair debate? Here is my point.
Yeah.
You have had people who are against secularism and socialism going to the Supreme Court. And let me tell you the truth, Mr. Modi's government is so hypocritical, as are his supporters on your panel. When he spends liberally on all these welfare expenditure, that is not socialism. That is not socialism. But you know what? Against socialism.
Look. We are all friends here, so I will just say that I take everyone's point. But I have to say that since my dear friend Anand and Abhijit have walked into this studio, they've been doing nothing but criticizing, picking out stuff to criticize from this speech, which is what I think makes us a healthy democracy. So I don't know, maybe your earpiece is tuned into some other studio, Sanjay,
No,
I don't know.
I've debated with them many times to know their ideology, Shiv. I know their ideology through and through.
No, they are fair.
But Sanjay, it's time for a break. On the other side, I have an interesting question for you on the RSS and the Prime Minister's appreciation of the RSS, and I'm sure you'll like that question. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today speaking on India's 79th Independence Day at the Red Fort hailed the role of the RSS in nation building. He has hailed the RSS. He has said that this is the world's largest NGO. He has also said that RSS has been dedicated to India's service for 100 years. The Congress has hit back now saying that RSS carries the legacy of hate. Let's listen into what the Prime Minister said.
आज से 100 साल पहले एक संगठन का जन्म हुआ, राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ। 100 साल की राष्ट्र की सेवा एक बहुत ही गौरवपूर्ण स्वर्णिम पृष्ठ है। व्यक्ति निर्माण से राष्ट्र निर्माण के संकल्प को लेकर के 100 साल तक मां भारती का कल्याण का लक्ष्य लेकर के लक्षावधि स्वयंसेवकों ने मातृभूमि के कल्याण के लिए अपना जीवन समर्पित किया है। सेवा, समर्पण, संगठन और अप्रतिम अनुशासन ये जिसकी पहचान रही है, ऐसा राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ दुनिया का ये सबसे बड़ा एनजीओ है। एक प्रकार से देश गर्व करता है राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ की इस 100 साल की भव्य समर्पित यात्रा को, और हमें प्रेरणा देता रहेगा।
My colleague Jainendra joins us with more details on this. Jainendra, the Congress party, specifically Rahul Gandhi, has been extremely critical of the RSS. Now with the Prime Minister openly acknowledging his association with the RSS, also praising the history of the Sangh, how has the Congress reacted to this?
बिल्कुल, देखिए, उम्मीदों के मुताबिक ही कांग्रेस ने तीखी आलोचना की है। कांग्रेस पार्टी के सांसद तमिलनाडु से हैं मणिकम टैगोर, उन्होंने कहा है कि आरएसएस की कोई भूमिका स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन में नहीं थी, और जिस तरीके से प्रधानमंत्री ने जिक्र किया लाल किले से आरएसएस का, ये अपमान है उन लोगों का जिन्होंने स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन में भाग लिया। तो कांग्रेस ने तीखा हमला बोला है प्रधानमंत्री के आरएसएस के जिक्र पर, और आरोप लगाया है कि प्रधानमंत्री ने ऐसा इसलिए किया ताकि वो आरएसएस को खुश कर सके। कांग्रेस जो है इस मसले को जोड़ रही है प्रधानमंत्री की उम्र से, 75 साल पर रिटायरमेंट वाली क्राइटेरिया से, और कह रही है कि आरएसएस को खुश करने के लिए प्रधानमंत्री ने ऐसा कहा है। और पहली बात तो यही कि आरएसएस की कोई भूमिका ही आजादी के आंदोलन में नहीं रही, चाहे जब हेडगेवार ने आरएसएस की स्थापना की तब, या फिर जब भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन के समय में गोलवलकर उनके प्रमुख थे तब। तो कांग्रेस ने सीधा दो टूक कहा है कि आरएसएस की कोई भूमिका स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन में नहीं थी, और लाल किले से आरएसएस का जिक्र कर प्रधानमंत्री ने अपमान किया है स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन में भाग लेने वाले तमाम स्वतंत्रता सेनानियों का। जी
धन्यवाद जैनेंद्र हमसे जुड़ने के लिए। आनंद रंगनाथन, this praise for the RSS also comes at a very tricky time for the BJP, because the president is going to be appointed and there needs to be consensus between the BJP and RSS. The Prime Minister openly talking about RSS today at the Red Fort. What do you think?
Yeah, it's brilliant. But first, let me correct Congress, who keeps on saying like a broken record. स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में RSS का कोई वो नहीं था. Let me just rattle out a few names. Devipad Chaudhary, Jagatpati Kumar, Hemu Kalani, Anna Sahib Deshpande, Ramakant Keshav, Vasant Rao Oak, Narayan Singh, Chandrakant Bhardwaj, Dada Naik, Babu Rao Begade, Lala Hansraj, Balaji Raipurkar. These are RSS pracharaks, functionary leaders who gave up everything, sometimes even their lives, who were hanged during independence struggle. And Congress is talking about independence struggle. Congress has broken more times than uranium has been split. This Congress is not the Congress of freedom struggle. As you know, this is Congress I, Indira Congress के बन के आई है, और उससे पहले Congress O था, उससे पहले Congress R था, that Indira Gandhi split. R meant requisitionist, whatever that meant for Indira. So let's not talk about things that are not stated in facts.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ranganathan. RSS again back being the flashpoint between the BJP and the Congress party attacking the Prime Minister now for him praising the RSS for its role in nation building. With that, it's time for a short break. More news and updates on the hour.